last word. We have North Carolina Senate candidate Roy Cooper joining us tonight. Very, very strong possibility for him to flip that Republican seat in North Carolina to the Democrats. This is after James Tallarico was here last night in what was the real beginning of his general election campaign against Ken Paxton. It happened right here on this network where he responded directly to what Paxton had just said about him. That campaign is obviously one of the big ones to watch, and it does seem like Tallarico now is in the favored position there.
Look, I love that you're having this week of Flip the Senate, because I think people are getting to know who these people are and about them and what they bring forward. There was a great interview last night. I watched it. He gave a great speech today, and I'll be looking forward to seeing what Roy Cooper has to say. He's likely going to be a senator in a year.
This Senate battle gets more real every day. It becomes more clear, gets more real every day, and we're going to be covering it all the way.
Certainly, we will be too. I'll look forward to watching your convo tonight.
Thanks, Jen.
Bye, Lawrence.
Thank you. Well, with Republicans now one step closer to losing another seat in the United States Senate, with Donald Trump's scandal-plagued candidate Ken Paxton winning the Republican nomination last night in Texas, thereby strengthening Democrat James Tallarico's chances of being the first Democrat to win a Senate election in Texas in 38 years. Today, Donald Trump said, "I don't care about the midterms." Donald Trump is the first president in history to say that he doesn't care about the midterm elections. No president has ever said that, even in private. But Donald Trump chose to say it today in a setting that is supposed to be private, a cabinet meeting. Donald Trump bragged at the beginning of his so-called cabinet meeting today about inviting the White House press corps to join the cabinet meeting. Donald Trump said, quote, "To the best of my knowledge, press has never been invited ever to a cabinet meeting for any reason at all." That's right, because prior to Donald Trump, cabinet meetings were real meetings. They were serious meetings. And as the powers of the presidency expanded after World War II, and the White House staff expanded exponentially, cabinet meetings became increasingly rare, but still important enough to be private so that everyone involved could speak freely to the president. Donald Trump's so-called cabinet meetings are really the kind of cheap reality TV Donald Trump used to play in a fake conference room on an absurd NBC show. And it is plain to everyone who actually watches even a second of a Trump cabinet meeting on TV that no one there would ever consider speaking freely to Donald Trump. They all know their job there is to praise Donald Trump and nothing else. And that has never been the purpose of a cabinet meeting before Donald Trump's silly, televised cabinet room performances. Donald Trump said, "I don't care about the midterms," when he was rambling about his belief that Iran had not negotiated a peace deal with him yet because Iran thinks that the political pressure of the coming midterm congressional elections will work in their favor in negotiating with Donald Trump.
They thought they were going to outweight me. You know, we'll outweight him. He's got the midterms. I don't care about the midterms.
I don't care about the midterms. That is exactly what Republicans in Congress have been assuming about Donald Trump, that he doesn't care about the midterms. He doesn't care about their future. But Donald Trump has not been able to resist meddling in the midterm elections. Senate Republicans are reportedly upset that Donald Trump turned against one of their colleagues, a reliable incumbent Republican Senator John Cornyn of Texas, to support a profoundly damaged new Republican nominee for Senate in Texas, Ken Paxton, who Republicans believe will be easier for Democrat James Tallarico to beat than John Cornyn would have been. And here is how James Tallarico greeted Ken Paxton's nomination to run against him last night when James Tallarico joined us on this program.
Ken Paxton embodies the broken political system that we're running against. He is the most corrupt politician in America. 3 years ago tomorrow, he was impeached by his own party for using his public office, his position of public trust, to enrich himself and his donors at our expense. And that is exactly the problem in our politics. It's puppet politicians who serve themselves and their billionaire mega donors instead of serving us. It's why we can't afford anything. It's why we can't get ahead no matter how hard we work. The system is rigged by corrupt politicians like Ken Paxton. And so it's going to be all of us. It's going to be Democrats, independents, and Republicans. It's going to be urban Texans, rural Texans, suburban Texans. It's going to be all of us coming together, the people versus Ken Paxton.
Republicans in the Senate and in the House do care about the midterm elections, and they know Donald Trump is not helping them, and they know nothing is hurting them more than Donald Trump's war in Iran and the inflation it has caused in this country, especially skyrocketing costs of gasoline and diesel fuel. 83% of voters say gas prices are going up a little or a lot, and not a single person has said gas prices are going down a lot, except Donald Trump, who said that today in his fake cabinet meeting.
But the American people, sir, are seeing higher gas prices.
Yeah,
now, it's come down a little bit, but it's still $4.45.
Oh, it'll come down a lot. It'll come down to where it was before.
So there's Donald Trump telling people gasoline prices have come down a lot. That's what he said. And he then said that from his limousine, he has seen gas stations with prices under $2 a gallon. It is impossible to be more removed from reality than Donald Trump, and few things demonstrate that better than Donald Trump's rambling so-called cabinet meetings where he tries to convince people the price of gas is less than half of what they actually paid today. In his so-called cabinet meeting today, during wartime, Donald Trump spent nearly 9 minutes speaking uninterrupted, nonstop, utterly without coherence, about the reflecting pool in Washington, D.C. that has never before been the subject in a presidential cabinet meeting. The reflecting pool that he is rebuilding. He lied about the size of the reflecting pool, saying it's longer than the tallest building in the world, which is not true. But he didn't mention the new reporting in the New York Times today by David Fahrenthold about the reflecting pool project. Quote, a National Park Service analysis found that the contractor, given a no-bid contract to repair the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, is being paid an inflated and excessive profit margin, according to federal documents obtained by the New York Times. So, in a country where people are wondering whether they can afford to fill up their gas tanks this week, Donald Trump is awarding no-bid contracts with inflated profit margins to rebuild the reflecting pool in Washington, D.C. in the way that he likes by the 4th of July. And he is paying for it by taking money from national parks all over the country and directing it away from those national parks where fewer Americans can afford to go now because of the rise in gasoline prices, and spending that money in Washington, D.C. on the reflecting pool. And for that, he was worshipped on cue in his cabinet reality show today.
The fact that we have dedicated presidential leadership is really what's made this possible.
It speaks to the strength of your leadership. It has never been a better time to be an American.
Just a reminder of another war you helped to settle, Mr. President.
It's exciting to see your vision.
You're leading us to the greatest economy that the world has ever known, and that's why they tell you to tell me to tell you, Mr. President, thank you, and they love you.
just like you talked about with the reflecting pool, we didn't do the same old thing the way we'd done it in the past after, Iraq and Afghanistan, the way we waged wars. Instead, you said we're going to do this smart.
And so on this, the 88th day of Donald Trump's smart war, Donald Trump's cabinet once again laughed about war.
And the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, Central Casting, he loves war. I guess he's a good man that way.
He loves war. Ha ha ha. No presidential cabinet has ever willfully, publicly shamed itself before. But such is the buffoonery of Donald Trump and his cabinet that when Donald Trump says something that no previous president has ever said about a member of his cabinet, he loves war, they all decide to underline that obscene line with their own laughter. The cabinet room has never reeked of such stupidity and inhumanity before, and it never will again after the Trump presidency. A Trump cabinet can be sure that they will never be outdone in their cruelty as they listened in awe to Elon Musk describing to them how he put the United States Agency for International Development, as he put it, into the wood chipper, denying food to starving people, denying medicine to people who would die without it. Such cruelty has never been overtly approved by American government officials. The way they all cheered on Elon Musk doing what Bill Gates called, quote, the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children. They cheered that on. The Trump cabinet's incompetence will never be outdone, has never been outdone. Donald Trump's defense secretary is in a war that he does not know how to win or to end. Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary is now busy overseeing the refund of Donald Trump's illegal and unconstitutional tariffs, which the Treasury Secretary alone in the history of Treasury Secretaries supported as constitutional when they were not. The New York Times is now trying to quantify the amount of empty and obviously false flattery visited upon Donald Trump in his so-called cabinet meetings. Quote, the New York Times reviewed over a dozen hours of cabinet meeting footage to analyze how his administration spoke to him. On average, at least one of every 6 sentences either flattered Mr. Trump, gave him credit, or criticized his political opponents. Administration officials have complimented the president far more in cabinet meetings than in his first term, according to the Times review of footage. One of the most striking features of Mr. Trump's cabinet meetings this term is the extent to which his leadership has been praised as unparalleled. The latest reports of firing during Donald Trump's ceasefire with Iran came tonight from U.S. Central Command in this statement, saying, quote, today U.S. Central Command forces shot down 4 Iranian one-way attack drones that posed a threat around the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. forces also struck an Iranian ground control station and Bandar Abbas that was about to launch a 5th drone. These actions were measured, purely defensive, and intended to maintain the ceasefire. So that is today's firing report during Donald Trump's ceasefire. The ceasefire during which Donald Trump is supposed to be negotiating a final peace agreement with Iran so that the Strait of Hormuz can reopen to shipping and the price of oil can begin to fall, so that the price of gasoline and diesel fuel and inflation in the United States could begin to drop just in time for Republicans to try to hold on to control of the House of Representatives and the United States Senate in the midterms, that Donald Trump told them today in no uncertain terms he does not care about. Leading off our discussion tonight is Pennsylvania Congressman Chris Deluzio. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee and a former surface warfare officer in the United States Navy. He was deployed overseas 3 times and previously patrolled the Strait of Hormuz. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Donald Trump once again discussing the Strait of Hormuz today, and clearly absolutely no reportable progress on reopening the strait.
It's remarkable, Lawrence, and great to be on with you again. This president started this war. It was the most predictable thing imaginable that the Iranians would use their leverage to shut down shipping, to put a strangle on what's coming through and out of the Strait of Hormuz. And we're all paying for it. We know it. We see it with gas prices. You talk to any business in America that's to deal with shipping costs or any of the inputs affected by oil prices, we're all feeling the pain. And remember, this president and his administration, they also shut down a lot of clean energy projects that would have made us less exposed to oil shocks in the Middle East. So on both accounts, they've made life worse for us. They've done it at great cost. More than a dozen Americans have died in this war. Hundreds have been wounded. They've spent billions and billions of dollars, and we're no better off.
What should happen next, given where we are tonight in Iran? What should be the next step?
We should put a stop to this. And the fact that this president has now plunged our country into this war, exposed the limits of his ability to stop the Iranians from harassing shipping. It has made all of us more vulnerable, more exposed, and frankly, we're paying for it in dollars and cents at home. The simple thing that Congress should do should put a stop to this president's ability to wage war and bring our troops home. And in the meantime, until the Congress will act, which I hope they will, that we continue to lose most of the Republicans and even some Democrats, including a senator from my state, who won't put a stop to this war. This president should get out of this war. It's a simple thing that he should do, and the American people are sick and tired of paying for this war.
What would it be like for you to be on active duty now during wartime, listening to the president talk more today about the reflecting pool than the war?
It's remarkable. I got to tell you, I'm not that old. You know, I served, I graduated from the Naval Academy in 2006. So I don't think I'm that old, but I cannot imagine when I was an active duty naval officer, a president, and I served when Barack Obama was president, when George W. Bush was president, so 2 very different commanders in chief. I can't imagine them spending a cabinet meeting in the midst of a war they started without going to the American people or to the Congress and be talking about a reflecting pool and getting their butts kissed by everybody else in their cabinet telling them what a great job they're doing. It's really crazy stuff. And look, this is no team of rivals. For those who know about Abraham Lincoln, this is far from it. And for those folks just be sycophantic, you know, kissing his butt constantly, it's just weird and pathetic. Country deserves a hell of a lot better than that.
Congressman Chris Deluzio, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And coming up, Donald Trump's slush fund might run into a problem like a 100% tax rate. Andrew Weissman will join us next. Republicans think California's tax rates are too high already. Wait until they hear about the 100% state income tax rate Governor Gavin Newsom has in mind for anyone who receives a payout from Donald Trump's $1.776 billion slush fund to pay the criminals who attacked the Capitol and tried to kill police officers and kill the vice president on January 6th.
One thing that I think we're going to try to do with your support is tax 100%. Anyone from California that receives any of those funds, we want to tax 100% of those proceeds. And that's an action the state of California can take.
And a Democratic member of the New York State Legislature is also proposing a 100% state income tax on anyone in the state of New York who receives any money from the Trump slush fund. But New York's Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi has a better idea. Congressman Suozzi has introduced what is now a bipartisan bill co-sponsored by Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick to simply kill the Trump slush fund. New polling shows just how unpopular the Trump slush fund is with Donald Trump's own supporters, including his strongest supporters. The Economist YouGov poll found that 52% of Republicans and 45% of MAGA supporters said they oppose the Trump slush fund. Only 32% of MAGA Republicans support Donald Trump's slush fund. Last night, in a reliably Republican area of Nebraska that Donald Trump won by 12 points in 2024, Republican Congressman Mike Flood faced questions like this at a town hall.
Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, settled that case for $1.776 billion with an anti-weaponization fund, which allows all those people on January 6th who broke into the Capitol to benefit from that fund. It also gives the president the right to go after that money. Last year you talked about fiscal conservatism. How is that fiscally conservative?
I have never approved that. I do not think 1 penny of any fund should ever go to any January 6th insurrectionist that was in the Capitol on January 6, 2021.
The Iran war, the White House ballroom, security for the White House ballroom, immigration enforcement, Trump Arch, returning the pool, the reflecting pool renovation, slush fund for crooks, and the farm bill. How do we pay for all this? Okay, we return to questions from the, I take them in order to your thoughts on the anti-weaponization slush fund. We've already had that one. The next 3 questions here are all the same. It's what do you think about the new slush fund?
Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin, the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, who is also a constitutional law professor, today released his top 10 reasons why Donald Trump's slush fund is unconstitutional. And joining us now is Andrew Weissman, former FBI general counsel and an MS Now legal analyst. He is the author of the new book, Liar's Kingdom, How to Stop Trump's Deceit and Save America, which is now, I am happy to report, #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us tonight. The constitutionality issues raised by Jamie Raskin, there's 10 of them. He cites, I think, 4 different amendments to the Constitution that this violates. But this may not survive to long enough to even face constitutional challenge as the political opposition builds.
Yes. So this is one where Congress could kill this any day of the week. They have the power of the purse, and obviously, there's substantial issues with this, not just how the money would be spent, but the idea that this is even a quote-unquote settlement. That has never been explained by Todd Blanche, how this in any way is a meritorious case, let alone a meritorious case that is worth $1.776 billion, as opposed to just a giveaway to Donald Trump, who is this case. So I think the real solution here is a political one, but there are pending motions now before the federal judge who had the case. It is technically closed, but the most recent motion is asking her to reopen it, saying that this is a product of fraud, and she has the power to vitiate what is going on. So there is a legal way to go forward with this, but the clear and obvious way is to have the political leaders take action. It is their power to do so.
What's it like in the federal courts when a judge is confronted with something like this, which truly no one in the history of American jurisprudence has ever seen before?
So I'm going to tell you a quick anecdote. I once, as a young prosecutor, was appealing something that a judge did, and I didn't have a case directly on point when I got to the Court of Appeals. And the judges, were confronted with the other side saying, Mr. Weissman has not cited a single case that is directly on point. And one of the judges said, well, of course not, because no one would ever have thought to do this. So there never was going to be a case on point because no one would have been this craven to have thought of this. That's the issue here, where lawyers have to now think outside of the box and think of the best analogies, because this is so completely bizarre. Let's just start with the issue that one of the reasons this usually does not get off the ground is because the people at the Department of Justice and at the IRS would say no, because they would adhere to their oath of office in Republican and Democratic administrations. So yes, of course, Donald Trump is Donald Trump, but the real problem here is the complicity of Todd Blanche and people around him. And you just played in the prior segment an example of that, of people who are complicit with what the president's doing, which is the antithesis of what you want from people who've taken an oath of office to represent us and the Constitution and not the president.
Well, Todd Blanche was in that cabinet room today for the first time as acting attorney general, taking his seat at the cabinet conference table there and continuing his long audition to win Donald Trump's confidence to nominate him to be the next attorney general, which obviously is a big part of what this slush fund is about.
Absolutely. So, you know, one of the things that is being reported today is a criminal case being open on E. Jean Carroll. That is, again, so emblematic of the cravenness of the Department of Justice. Here is somebody who not just one, but two separate juries have found that she was both defamed and sexually assaulted by the President of the United States. You can join this with what happened with Jerome Powell, with the 6 members of Congress who they sought to indict. It is so much against what America is supposed to stand for. On its face, it is vindictive. There is absolutely no reason to re-victimize E. Jean Carroll after she had the temerity and the courage to bring those two cases and to be vindicated. It's so deplorable in terms of what it signals Todd Blanche is willing to do for this president.
Andrew Weissman, congratulations on the New York Times bestseller list, and thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
And coming up, Donald Trump said today, I don't care about the midterms. North Carolina's former Governor Roy Cooper really does care about the midterms, which is why he's running for Senate and looks like one of the very likely Democratic winners in November. Roy Cooper joins us next. In the 2020 election in North Carolina, there was one candidate who got more votes than Donald Trump. It was Roy Cooper, the 2020 Democratic candidate for governor. Donald Trump received 2.7 million votes in 2020, winning with less than 50% in North Carolina, and Roy Cooper received 2.8 million votes, winning North Carolina with nearly 52% of the vote. That suggests some number of North Carolina voters voted for both Donald Trump and Democrat Roy Cooper. Roy Cooper is now one of the Democrats' big hopes to turn a North Carolina Senate seat from Republican to Democrat. With retiring North Carolina Republican Senator Thom Tillis leaving office as a sometimes critic of Donald Trump, Roy Cooper is campaigning as a real Democratic opponent of Donald Trump in a state where a new poll shows 56.6% of North Carolina voters disapprove of the job Donald Trump is doing as president, while just 41.5% approve. And so the Trump-endorsed Republican candidate for Senate, Michael Whatley, is endorsed by someone who has the approval of only 41% of North Carolina voters. Here is former Governor Roy Cooper's latest ad in his campaign for Senate.
When you're negotiating with Iran, Mr. President, to what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. I don't think about Americans' financial situation.
There is no doubt that the war in Iran is contributing to the cost of living. Right now, as things stand, do you support President Trump's ongoing effort in Iran, given that economic impact here at home?
Absolutely. First, we need to do something about this war in Iran. You've got to focus on what's happening at home. This is an administration that promised that they would deal with high prices on day one. Not only have they not done that, they've made it so much worse.
And joining us now is former Governor Roy Cooper. He is the Democratic nominee for United States Senate in North Carolina. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Today, Donald Trump spent more time talking in more detail about the reflecting pool in Washington, D.C. than he did on how to end his war in Iran, with absolutely no indication that oil prices or gasoline prices will be coming down anytime soon. And Donald Trump actually tried to tell people that gasoline prices are already down. Are North Carolina voters understanding just how much Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand about their situation?
I know that North Carolina families, many of them are in crisis right now. I've been going across the state for months. I've been on a Make Stuff Cost Less tour, and they had been telling me about their high utilities, their grocery costs. Many of them had to do with these tariffs, their cost of health care, the cost of child care, and then boom, here comes the war in Iran, and gas prices are more than $1 a gallon. And my opponent, Michael Whatley, is all in on this war. Obviously, it was one that did not have an exit strategy or a strategy going in. But let me tell you, the people in power want to hang on to it, Lawrence. And they already, the Republicans and an outside group have already committed to more than $100 million here in North Carolina, particularly during the last 12 weeks, to try to convince the people of North Carolina, I am someone I am not. We cannot let them buy this race. We have to win North Carolina in order to take back the Senate. And if people want to help us out and see what kind of policy proposals I'm putting out there to bring costs down, they can go to roycooper.com.
Donald Trump said today that he doesn't care about the midterms, meaning he's in no hurry at all to reach a solution in Iran. What did North Carolina voters feel about the urgency of the situation in Iran?
Well, they can't take the gas prices anymore. I know a lot of people are concerned about the foreign policy and the fact that this administration had promised not to get involved in these foreign wars and all of a sudden did it. And they were concerned that this administration promised them that they deal with the cost of living on day one. Not only have they not done that, they've made it so much worse. Then they come out with this slush fund that is going to be paid for by taxpayers that's going to give money to these January 6 rioters. And when you think about what happened on that day and seeing people storming the Capitol and assaulting police officers, man, when I was Attorney General, we used to put those people away, not give them a payout. And my opponent, Michael Whatley, when a number of Republicans have at least run away from this idea, he said, no, I'm all in. You know, that's got to stop. And a lot of people in North Carolina are seeing that and are so frustrated that this administration not only is doing nothing about their cost of living, but it's actually taking actions to hurt the situation with the war in Iran, with the tariffs, with ripping away their health care, with the one big beautiful bill. They've had enough of it. They want a course correction for our country, and we need to step up and make sure we win North Carolina with this Senate race. And as I've told you, Lawrence, North Carolina hasn't elected many Democrats to the Senate. Our last Democrat was 2008. We've only had 2 Democrats elected to the Senate in almost 40 years, and both of them were one term. And oftentimes, even when Democrats have had leads, Republicans have come on at the end because they buy so much TV time. We've got to stand up and make sure that doesn't happen here in North Carolina. We got to take back the Senate.
Roy Cooper, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.
And coming up, Princeton University professor Eddie Glaude will join us to discuss his important new book, America, USA, about how our history of July
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على الحبيب الذي أجاءنا هدى. يا رب بالنور أكرم مهجتي واغفر ذنوبي وهون كربتي. أنت الرجاء إذا ضاقت بنا الدنيا، وبذكرك العالي تحيا روحنا. الله يا مولانا، أنت الرحيم وأنت هادينا. الله يا رحمن، بنورك اجعل قلوبنا إيمان. صلوا على طه الرسول محمد، خير البرية والنور المؤيد، من بالصلاة عليه نال راحة، والقلب من أنواره يتجدد. يا ربنا اجعلنا على درب الهدى، واختم بالخيرات أعمارنا مدى. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على الحبيب المصطفى